I'm Mehek. I'm on the side of controversy that likes pineapples on pizza. And I only properly got introduced to the Marvel Universe after Avengers Infinity War, to be honest.
Interesting and very bold to say in front of all listeners, Mehek, but gives us a good insight into you as a person. I'm glad that this was a personal touch to a much more professional podcast. So, guys, this is Mehek Sanghavi. She's a freshman at Curtin University in Perth, Australia, pursuing medicine. So, she's got a long journey ahead of her. Today, we'll be hearing more from Mehek about the choices she's made, the lessons she's learned along the way, as well as her advice to young high schoolers like yourself for listening to the podcast as you prepare for this very exciting and upcoming roller coaster of a journey that you're about to embark on, which we call as university. So, welcome to University Unraveled. I'm your host, Arya Darod. I currently study at Minerva University, so I'm an incoming sophomore. Welcome, Mehek, and thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So, from knowing you well over the last couple of years, I know that this is around 10th, 11th grade. Everyone was talking US, UK, Canada, and you were sort of dead set on going to Australia, like your elder brother also. I'm curious why Australia specifically over any of the other countries where you could have pursued medicine.
I think it was mainly because of family. My parents and everyone was really keen on me going to Australia, including myself, because my mom's own brother lives there in Melbourne. I did not end up going to Melbourne. I ended up in Perth, which is another state, but it's still in the same country. So the mindset was that in case there's any emergency, you could always take a flight and go meet them or they could come meet you. There's just that backbone of support if you ever need it. And also, it's just the lifestyle. I feel like personally, I would have preferred a laid back lifestyle such as it is in maybe Perth compared to US, which is more party culture, as I've come to notice. And in terms of future, I also thought that because I'm going to be doing medicine, if I end up doing my internships and getting registered on the medical board in Australia, would I want to stay there and do my practice in Australia itself or come back to India? And the only country I could see myself even potentially settling down apart from India was Australia, again, because of family. And it's just like second home because I've been there since I was a child. And I know you said that US might have a great med program, but Australia, I think, has a pretty good med program too. And maybe I can tell you a bit more about what that's like in a future question, or maybe just elaborate more on what medicine is like in Australia.
No, I mean, let's get into it. What is medicine like in Australia? And if if this is also something you're comfortable asking, answering, what do you see as pros of doing a medicine program in Australia versus another country, US, UK, Canada?
Well, I think first off, in terms of US, as most people know, you have to do a bachelor's, which is not related to medicine, or maybe most people do like biomed and then get into medicine after, which is definitely longer than just doing a direct entry into medicine straight out of high school, which UK offers as well. But I have come to notice that some people, again, this is a controversy, and I don't want to take any sides because I have not studied in UK and I always wanted to go to Australia, so I haven't studied a lot about it. So if I upset anyone by saying this, I apologize. But a lot of people don't necessarily prefer the NHS, which is the health system of the UK. They prefer the Australian health system. And honestly, it's also easier to get a PR compared to UK and US and Australia. So if anyone's planning on maybe settling down in a country not which was not India, for example, for me, then it would have been easier in Australia. So
I'm curious why. So it feels like some sense of familiarity and being close to family and some sense of home is important for you. Was very important when choosing the location. Why not just pursue medicine in India?
Because I did not want to take physics. I'm going to be blunt. I hated physics. And I was sure that I wanted to go out of India because, as much as I love India, I wanted that independence. I wanted to leave home, be in a country which is completely like unfamiliar, even though I've been there a lot. So that I have to learn to do everything on my own, figure out transport, do the cooking, do cleaning, or make friends who might not be from the same background or culture. I feel like it just makes you grow a lot as a person when you're not in that comfort bubble of your own country and having your own people around you.
I would love to walk through. This must be still fresh in your head as it is in mine, but the process of actually finalizing that college list. So having those 15 or 20 colleges which you end up applying to. Part one, how do you find those colleges? Like there must be hundreds, but how do you finalize those 15 or 20? And part two, how do you conduct research on them? Like what are the factors that go into play between selecting that dream school? Like is it location? Is it faculty? What was on your mind? I'd love to have a sneak peek.
Part one, there weren't 100 universities, for me at least, because I was shortlisted in terms of country. I was like, Australia, for sure. And in terms of medicine, again, I was like, I want to do straight out of high school, undergraduate medicine. And there are only limited universities in Australia that actually offer that as a course. So what I did was I researched which universities actually offer undergraduate medicine in Australia, applied to every single one that offered the course. And when you're applying, you can obviously write your second or third preference in terms of your course. So I chose something which might be related. And again, in that, I went about it a little strategically, where in some of those universities, I applied for a Bachelor of Biomedicine it, in case I don't get medicine straight up, so that I can use the Bachelor of Biomedicine as a pathway into medicine. But in some universities, I applied for things like physiotherapy, occupational therapy, exercise and nutrition, so that I have an option in terms of when I get the offers. Because if
Mhm.
you think about it, then only if you're 100% sure that I will take how many ever years it takes, but I want to be a doctor, that's probably a good idea for you to maybe do biomedicine or something like that and not care about that bachelor's degree because you know your end goal is trying to get into medicine. But I was starting to question things, and I was like, if I don't get bachelor of medicine, then I might do physiotherapy or occupational therapy and just do that instead of trying to write another entrance exam and get into medicine. So I feel like these are things everyone needs to consider. Things might not always go as planned. You might not always get the course that is your dream course, but there's always plan B. Make sure you always have a plan B and don't be disappointed by it because you can always pivot in life. In my course, there's still people who've done paramedicine or nursing and shifted into medicine now after completing their degree. So I think that's just very important to remember.
Yeah. Never underestimate that value of a plan B. Like I said this on a previous episode, I'll say it again, is it's lovely to hope for the best and also prepare for the worst. I think that's a great way to go about things, especially with university. So I love that we touched upon that.
I would like to say though that in terms of choosing which university to go to after you have that huge list, you need to attend forums, maybe online forums, or as I said, webinars, open days, anything that can get you a little insight into the course and the prerequisites, the criteria, the course structure, stuff like that. And then, honestly, even cost, because my course is for 5 years and that is more expensive than the same course in another university, which is for 6 years. So for some people, that is a huge factor when considering which university they need to attend. Cost is something that needs to be considered. And then there's also laws related to the course, which I know in some courses might not seem like such a big deal. But for me, if I want to do medicine in India, I had to make sure that the law in India accepts a Australian medical degree for me to come back and practice in India. Or even in Australia itself, every state has different laws when it comes to practicing and people accepting international students in terms of internship. So, looking at the laws in every state for your course is also something that can really help. And I feel like the main thing that helped me was on LinkedIn and through my mom's contacts, friends, however you can, reaching out to students who might be studying that course in the universities so that you can ask them their first-hand experience of how it's been so far, which gives you more insight than anything, I feel, because they're students like you who've done exactly the same process that you are doing.
Hmm. Be very honest here. Do these students are a couple of years in, so it's also a sunk cost mentally. Um, are they completely open with you about pros and cons, and do they give you a very candid explanation, or do you feel like sometimes they're trying to sell you the university?
Definitely the second one, for sure. Um, like no student is probably going to say, no, my university is not good at all, don't come here. But I feel like it's the way you put forth the question, right? If you express certain inhibitions, like maybe you've read something on an online forum. I know I asked one of the students that, hey, I read this as a um, issue with the university on the forum, and can you please tell me if this is actually an issue or not? And the person said, I will be honest, this was an issue when I first joined the course, but that was because the course was so new that even they were figuring out how exactly to run it.
Mhm.
And the people at the hospital, the doctors and everyone, the students from this university were very new. So even they were taking time adjusting to them. But now that it's been a few years into the course, they've solidified all those gaps. The doctors and the staff are more comfortable with everyone from that university. So it's not the same anymore. So you'll always have some people who give you their honest opinion if you ask them a direct question instead of trying to beat around the bush and asking, can you just give me your general feedback?
That's a good insight. That's a good insight. Go to them with specific things you've heard about, specific fears or inhibitions you have, as you said, which you've read about online. And then it's much more difficult to outright lie and sort of cover something
Mhm.
up. Like then that will also cause them to open up personally. I know that when I'm asked about Minerva, when people ask me pointed questions, I've heard this is not working, I've heard that is not working. I'm also 100% open and candid with them about what is working and what is not. Like I won't lie to them. Also, why whenever I get eventually top universities on the podcast, Ivy Leagues, Oxford, Cambridge, um, I hope to ask all of those students a very direct question, which is one limitation or one drawback of attending your university, which I think is a very important question to ask, regardless of the university. If it's the top number one, what is one limitation or what is one drawback of going to a Harvard or a Stanford or an Oxford or a Cambridge? And there is something. So I'm glad we touched upon this. This was a lovely segment. Would love to. It might be this might be rare, but if there's a hypothetical high school student who, like you, is very dead set on just Australia and only applying to Australia, would love to walk through the macro application process for an Australian university. What were the steps? Plus, as per your understanding as a student, I'm sure you don't have full information, but in your mind and from what you've heard so far from professors and other students, what parts of the application are more weightage compared to others?
Absolutely. So, firstly, for everyone who's thinking extracurriculars, I haven't done too much. I'm probably not going to get in. Australia, as far as I know, is not as strict about having multiple extracurriculars. They do focus more on academics. But in terms of extracurriculars, you obviously should try and get those under your belt if Australia is just an option for you and you're still considering US or UK or any other place. And even if Australia doesn't put a lot of weightage on extracurriculars, I know a lot of people said this to me when I asked this exact same question, and it really made me think twice about considering extracurriculars. And this was that even though they have more focus on academics, in that case, everyone's probably trying their best in academics. And as a university, if I have two applications with exactly the same academic score, I won't have any option but to maybe look at anything they've done extra, because there is only a limited number of seats and I have to choose one out of the two. And if there is no other process that I can look at apart from just this, it will come down to something you've done more than the other person. So for me personally, in terms of medicine, I did do job shadowing in a hospital. I did job shadowing under a physiotherapy clinic for a week. And that was again also to see whether I enjoy physiotherapy more or do I actually like the hospital environment as a doctor more, which kind of also made me sure about pursuing medicine. So it doesn't necessarily have to be for your resume or your CV. It can just be an extracurricular you do for you to be sure about what you're choosing as your course. And apart from that, I can't tell you the process for every single course, but for medicine, we as international students have an exam called ISAT for some universities. I wrote ISAT, and UCAT ANZ is an exam which both international and domestic students take. It's the same for everyone. I wrote both because, as I said, I wanted to apply to all universities which offered undergraduate medicine. So I feel like it really broadens your options if you give both the exams. And some universities actually say that they'll consider best out of the two if you
Mm.
give both. And that's obviously an advantage any time of the day. After that, based off of those scores, you get called for an interview. And I think that the interview is what most universities focus on the most, because that's also like the end stage. That's the last part of their selection process before they send you an offer. And it's because on your application, you can maybe make stuff up. But when you're doing an interview and they're actually seeing the way you're responding, the way you're behaving, your body language, that can't really lie. So I feel like interviews are really important in terms of the selection process for medicine. And you can look at YouTube videos, you can take maybe some courses if you can to try and prepare for it. And after the interview for Curtin University, they also had a test called Casper, which was another test, which was almost like a personality test of sorts, which got tested before we got an interview offer, but this was just for Curtin. And I want to be as honest as I can. So I did not do very well on ISAT or UCAT. And I was surprised to get an offer from Curtin for an interview. And I think that that was especially because of luckily their Casper test, because I got really high percentile in that test.
Mm.
And still, I was apprehensive about actually getting into the university for medicine because of my low scores academically in terms of UCAT and ISAT. And even my 12th grade board exam marks were literally on like the borderline of what they accept as the prerequisite. So I
Mm.
was like, definitely people have higher than that. But I still got an offer. So if anyone's watching this who is thinking they won't get in because of similar reasons. I'm here. Like it doesn't always just have to be because of your academics. Ace your interview. I think that's what happened for me and probably worked.
What was the level of preparation before the interview? Did you go in unprepared, or did you do a ton of like mock interviews before it?
Me and even my friends from medicine, we've all actually done interview prep, and it was mainly from what I know with help of an organization. There are multiple organizations out there that actually help you either with your application process, one, for getting in, two, for preparing for your entrance exams, and three, for interview preparation. And again, I want to just put it out there that it is a little bit pricey. It's not the cheapest thing. So, not everyone might want to take that as an option. So, you can always also prepare for it in terms of looking at YouTube videos or try and find interview questions for medical students in Australia, and you'll get like a few questions and record yourself or ask your parents or siblings or friends to ask you those questions and say the answer like you would in an actual interview. I think all of that helps as well. But I will not lie in saying that the organization which helped me with my interview preparation was huge help.
Hmm. So if it's within your means and within your budget, this is a good resource which you're recommending to any students for their interview prep. And this is regardless of course. This is not just for medicine students, correct?
No, this is for medicine students because as far as I know, interviews don't happen for all courses.
Hmm.
Interviews is a selection process for medical students.
Okay.
So this is not for all courses.
Understood. Very interesting. Yeah, I feel like this is action packed, full of advice and specific resources for someone who's listening, who's interested in Australia. I think this is full of insight and wisdom. So loving this conversation. This was a lovely section on before university. I'm glad that we got an insight into why Australia, why medicine, into the application process, into some application tips for Australian universities. I'm glad that we touched upon this entire aspect of university research and going into the campus. You need not say anything, but if to conclude this first section of the podcast, do you have any just more macro level advice or wisdom you want to share with a high schooler who's currently struggling with their university applications?
I would just say know what you're doing in terms of where your head's at. There is a little bit of self reflection that you need to do before you make the application in terms of what exactly it is you want to do. You do need to be a little strategic about the applications. So don't do it alone. Talk to your parents, talk to your siblings, take your teacher's help if you have to, but don't go through the process alone. Ask for help if you need it.
Perfect. Don't go through the process alone. I feel like that would be a good life motto beyond just university. So this is
Yeah.
you've just finished up first semester, Curtin. So unlike me and the other American students, you started in January and you're just home now after the first semester. So I'm sure day one and week one is still decently vivid in your head. And this is very frightening for all of us. I would just love to walk through what were the initial few days and the first week like at Curtin, if you had some sort of orientation and foundation, and being thrown into that completely new environment with totally different people, leaving home. How did you sort of just stay at peace and stay grounded and get to action and start figuring things out?
Um, for me, it was actually two different first days because I had a first day at my university accommodation, which I went to 1 month before our medicine and course started. So I had a first day for meeting people at my accommodation and settling in there. And then I had a first day of university life, which was first day meeting everyone in my cohort.
Mm.
So, in the first day of my accommodation, I remember I landed in Perth and we had gotten a list of events happening for the entire week. And I thought to myself, if I don't attend any of the events, especially today, where I've literally just landed and I had to go to the dining hall to have dinner, I said to myself, I won't know where to sit. You know that feeling where you go to a completely new school and you're in the dining hall with a tray and you're like, where should I sit now? That was the feeling I was having. So I saw an event for bowling
Mm.
in an hour after I reached my accommodation. And I said, I am going to go to this, even if I see one person apart from me come to it. I will at least know one person that I can probably go and sit with for dinner. So I feel like just those things, trying to socialize, trying to do your best to get to know anyone you can, is always a start. And I'm glad I did that because it actually helped. That one person that I went to dinner with called me at their table and said, come sit with us. And that was a start to me trying to socialize with their friends and working my way through getting to know other people. So I think go to as many events as you can, just in the dining hall. Even if I didn't do that, I know there are a lot of my friends who just sat at a random table every meal and talked to random people, and that's how they figured out which friend group they clicked with. So I think that's really important. And on my first day of medicine, at that point, it was a little different for me because there were some people I knew from my accommodation who were there in medicine. So on my first day, I sat with them, right? But those people weren't people that I was close with, even in my accommodation. But it helped on the first day because I was like, I at least know someone.
Mm.
And then the second day, I started and I went and sat with a different group who I didn't know because I was like, on the first day, I've sat with people I know anyways. So let's switch it up a little bit. And I think that was a good decision because those are the people I am closer to now than the people that I sat with on the first day. So I
Mm.
think you just shouldn't be afraid of approaching people that you haven't met on per se your day one, because sometimes it's not the day ones, sometimes it's the day five or after you're a week into medicine and you're more familiar with the place and the people that you try to actually understand who your vibe matches with more. And it's okay to take that first few days to just try and be awkward.
Mm.
Everyone's awkward. Like everyone's coming into that experience from a new university, from a new high school. There's people of different ages, different cultures. You're not the only one who's feeling like they have no one.
Mm.
So just say hi. Say see a random person you don't know and say hello.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I applaud you for getting past that awkwardness. It is very awkward to just go and sit at a new table for lunch, but 5 minutes in, it could be like the best decision you've made, and these are the people you're spending the next couple months with. So worth it if you look at just a basic what could go wrong versus what could go right scenario. Um, how were the first few days just emotionally for you, emotionally and mentally?
Oh, there's a lot of mixed feelings, right? Because as I said, I've always wanted to get out. I've always wanted to know how it's like to be independent. But then you reach there and you're like, maybe I don't want to know. Maybe I just want to go back home. I want mama to do my laundry. I want to get good food that I know I like. So there's always that nostalgia of all the memories you had before that you had to let go of. All my best friends from high school who are not with me anymore. And just missing mama, missing your family, missing food. It's a lot. But then you're in a new place, and for a moment, it's also exciting because you're like, I have all the freedom. I can make my own decisions. I'm an adult now, and that's kind of a good feeling because That's what I feel like most people, once they're in their high school, kind of want. So it was also really like exciting for me. And I was very eager to start my journey because also medicine, I was like, and it's not just medicine, just getting into university, you've had so much stress about waiting for your acceptance. So once you reach there, you're like, I've done it. I'm here and I want to give my best and I want to do whatever I can to actually appreciate this entire college journey. So I feel like that day one really hits you very hard and there's multiple emotions. You're happy, you're sad. It's a lot.
It's the whole. It's like all the crayons in the box, or like I'm trying to make an analogy here, but interesting that you had a chance to experience so many different emotions. Briefly, if I were to sort of share my journey, was just the whole first week. I didn't have time to think or feel. We were like from day one, we were bombarded with activities. We went all over the city, had different lectures and activities and community bonding events every night. Just come back exhausted, throw your shoes off and get into bed. After a week, I think whatever you're saying sunk into me. But by that first week, I had gotten a good familiarity with the city, with the people, and I was sort of glad that I am here. I knew that this was a good place to be. So I think everyone has their own journey. I just wanted to highlight that.
Yeah.
Um, I am
But I
also,
think
go ahead.
but I think that's why to anyone watching this, if they can, I would suggest maybe going to wherever they are planning on moving at least a few weeks before their course actually begins, if they are able to, that is, because then that gives you some time to not have to focus about your university. It helps you get that time you need to settle into a new country or the new environment and be able to at least get to know a few people you might have just bumped into while you've been there for a while. And I think that is good preparation to be in a stable enough emotional and mental state as well once your university actually starts. And then I feel like socializing with people you're going to spend your entire course with also gets easier because then you've had that time to assimilate into that new culture. And then you are in that mind space to have a good conversation, make those connections with people. So I think if you can just go a little bit early.
Absolutely. I think I've had friends who settled in very well into, so we were in San Francisco. I personally don't have family there, but I know friends who had family in San Francisco, the Bay Area, went 2 weeks early, stayed with family or friends. So one, you know, you have a support system there if anything ever goes wrong by chance. And two, you get a feel for the place. You sort of start going around, you visit campus, you get to know a few people. And by the time your course starts, you're honestly kind of feeling at home. That'll take a couple more weeks or months, but solid advice. I want to talk briefly. You brought up cultural assimilation. I want to dive a little deeper into that. Anything that was particularly shocking or surprising to you about just being in Australia and being at an Australian institution, which took some time to adjust to?
There's obviously that I don't think this is just about an Australian institution. I think this is about university in general. But the entire thing about having to figure out your own resources and studying independently on your own, not having a teacher following up on your assignments and stuff, I think that's really different because then you have the onus of your own learning, which I think is so different to school. That was one thing that was a little hard to figure out, which obviously I think personally my seniors helped me with a lot because they've already been through that process and they've figured out the, I'd say, tricks to finding the right resources or getting stuff done on time. And apart from that, in terms of Australia as a country, I did not have a lot of culture shock, to be honest, because as I said, one of the reasons I chose Australia was because it was a familiar and um, it was a familiar country. I do think that I might have underestimated the whole party situation. You know how I said that US is a very party culture kind of place.
Mm.
I think even Australia does enjoy its party culture for sure. They love a good beer and just sitting out on the beach or a park and enjoying with friends or going to nightclubs, having a good time. But I think it's also that thing where it's a little distant from the rest of the world. So there's also a lot more going out in terms of going outdoors, not just,
Mm.
I haven't seen a lot of house parties and stuff. So I think that is one thing that was shocking to me because I was prepared for Australia to be just like everyone's just doing sports and that's it, nothing else. But no, it wasn't like that. And in terms of the language, I think I thought there was going to be a lot more slang than it was because everyone like exaggerates Australian slang, but I don't think it's that bad. So that was definitely one thing.
I think we go with a lot of preconceived notions and stereotypes about the place, and a lot of them get broken. Few of them get proven true, but I think the majority of them, in my case at least, just get broken. And you sort of question how you, as a rational person, could even believe something about a certain culture or people, but some things are just ingrained in us as a stereotype. So glad
Yeah.
we touched upon this. I want to say that I'm very jealous of you because most of us only had about a maximum 3.5 month summer break. You had a whole about 8 months from June all the way till end of December, January, to rest and relax and recoup after sleepless nights of IB, and before getting into university. So you had a long summer break. Would love to touch upon how you spend that time. And just even if someone has only 2 or 3 months, what are good things to do during the summer break before university?
I honestly did not do a lot. I just relaxed. There was not a lot of, I'd say, productivity because in my head, I thought after university starts, I'm probably going to be studying so much, anyways, especially with the course I went into. I already knew that I was probably going to have to study a lot. And my parents also said that to me. They were like, just take this break to do whatever you want, have fun, not do anything. I just watched TV in YouTube and scrolled reels for a good few weeks after school.
Mm.
But then you get to a point where even that's boring. So then I kind of shifted towards reading, which was really shocking because, to be honest, I wasn't much of an avid reader. But I got into reading because of that huge amount of time that I had to do nothing. And then I think learning a new skill is something a lot of people enjoy, whether that's learning an instrument or maybe a language. I downloaded Duolingo and I was like, I will learn Korean because I was so into K dramas at that time. I just wanted to do it for fun. And now I'm at a point where I can read Korean, but I have no idea what it means because I stopped doing it after the break got over. But it was something that was entertaining in that time. And a few words is still better than nothing, I'd say. So, and then there's also cooking. I baked a lot. And then I also, I think any creative means like drawing, doing art, or I know I started trying to write poetry. I know you're very big on that. It probably wasn't as good as yours, but I picked up on writing poetry. And apart from that, keeping all of that aside, I think one of the most important things is to spend time with your family because you're going to be going away from them. And when I say that, I mean I went to different states in India, wherever my family was, to meet them as well, not just my family, as in my brother and my parents, because you're especially them, your parents and your siblings, you're going to be meeting every time you try and come back for a vacation.
Mm.
But your extended family members, you're probably not going to be meeting anymore as much if you only have 2 3 months of vacation. So
Mm.
I think if you have such a huge chunk of time before going to university, please do that. Go meet your extended family as well, because it might be one of the very few times you get to meet them once before a few years. So I think that's a good idea.
Absolutely. Speaking from experience of doing the whole first year is intense. Please catch up on sleep. Please don't keep that summer break super busy. Please reconnect with hobbies. A lot of these hobbies that you just spend some time with during summer break might be something that you come back to only after university is over, just because university might be intense. So take that time to engage with those hobbies. And yes, absolutely go and give the official goodbye to, I mean, when you said it, it sounded more like you were going off to war and giving the official goodbye to all the family. But I think very important, meet the cousins and meet the friends as well, who you might not be seeing for a while. For this could be years for some of us. So
I mean, in some ways, university is a war. It's an emotional and mental war.
true. Okay, I will take that. How has, I'm sure your university is full of international students. Sure, people come from countries and cultures all over the globe. I want, and that's something that we have gone there for. It's something valuable to us. So we don't want to be stuck with just our Indian friends. We want to be interacting with everyone. But I'm just curious how you. This is something I'm still learning how to figure out. It's a struggle with some people. Is how do you connect with someone who probably doesn't speak great English, who comes from a totally different culture than you, and you just genuinely have very little shared common ground or understanding or belief system. How do you connect with them and make them a friend?
Firstly, I believe that little common ground is still common ground. And if not common ground, it's still a learning opportunity. So, firstly, the common ground, try and start with that. If it's about food, that's always a common ground. Talk to them about what food they like. If it's a culture specific food that you're not sure about, then ask them what it is, how it's made. Ask them to show you pictures if you want. Do the same about your culture. I think the main thing in terms of different cultures is showing interest. Don't look like you don't care. Genuinely ask questions. Feel interested in them as a person. Because once you start looking at them as a person and not a country or an ethnicity, then it'll be a lot easier to talk to them. And then I feel like when it comes to the learning, you don't have to feel bad if you don't know something or if you say something wrong, because there are so many stereotypes everyone has. And it's fine if you say it by mistake. If they feel hurt by it, then genuinely apologize and tell them that you didn't know and you're glad that you do now. I'm sure they'll appreciate that a lot more than you continuing to have that stereotype and not addressing it at all.
Mm.
And when you learn those new things about the culture, only then I feel like you'll even start to settle in more in that country, especially because then you know a lot more about that culture and you'll feel like less of an outsider. So I think that's definitely going to help. And as I said, again, hello is the same in every language. Even if you're not very good at English, you probably know the word hello. Start with hello. Maybe you'll surely if you're good at English and they're not, they'll try and say something themselves, whatever they're comfortable saying. You just need to go and take that first step. That's
Mm.
what I feel.
Love it, love it. Lot of things which I could repeat. I will just repeat the yes. Say hello. Hello is the same in every language. Love that bit that you brought out, and I think eventually it becomes a beautiful melting pot of cultures, and you eventually become a lot more comfortable. I personally have been openly stating stereotypes to people of different cultures, the Pakistanis, the Chinese, the Americans in my university, and they are actively helping me break those stereotypes. On the other hand, people have actively been asking me whether my country is just a bunch of small villages and whether we go from place to place on an elephant. And I've been actively breaking those stereotypes. So, but it's one of the things I would just never give up about my university is just that diversity. And I've said this on a previous podcast. I will say it again that the ideal vision for me is that if I go to any country, anywhere I want to have someone there who gives me a bed to sleep in. I don't want to be investing that money in a hotel. So I want that level of friendships with people from all over. I would like to ask you a quick question about your future, which is distant. You have a lot of studying left to do. But once all the studying is done, what do you hope to be doing after graduation?
That is a hard question. I don't know, honestly, because I've gotten so many people who've come up to me and gone like, "Do you know what kind of doctor you'll be?" And I said, "No," because right now I might have a certain idea of what each specialty looks like. But when I go onto the wards and I see each specialty, I might have a completely different understanding. And I might actually be interested in a specialty I never thought I would. So I am waiting for the placements to start so that I can know what I want to tailor my future in medicine to look like. But I definitely want to do my first year of internship after my studies is over in Australia itself. And I would like to do that in Western Australia itself because it is easier to get a PR. And I feel like, in terms of, as I said, the laws for students, which you probably should look at before you consider where to go. I think international students studying in a university which is from Western Australia itself do have higher chances of getting an internship maybe in Western Australia compared to interstate. So I hope that works out. And I am thinking of at least applying for a PR, even if I don't end up settling down there. Maybe, not sure. It is a potential option and keeping my mind open to both scenarios. Maybe applying for PR and then seeing whether I want to get citizenship or not will be is that's the plan for now. But 4 years, anything can change. I'm not set in stone about anything.
Yeah, absolutely. I think each year will give you more clarity. I think this is what internship, like you sound like the perfect person to do a ton of internships and apprenticeships because this is what will give you an idea into the sneak peek of these different
Yeah.
careers. So that is why we have internships over our university summers. That is why, at least for American universities, we have these crazy long summers as we're expected to do that internship and get that exposure to the real world. Lovely. Okay. Quick.
That's why if not internship, that's why I'm trying to do volunteer work in India as well. Because as I said, that might give me a chance to compare what medicine looks like in Australia and India. So then I have a little more background to go off of when I'm making that big decision of whether I should settle down in Australia or India. So I think exploring all those things is important before making such huge decisions in terms of your future.
Awesome. This has been a lovely conversation so far, action packed, full of great insights and tips from someone who's just completed the first couple of months at university. So, the months where everything is new and there's a ton of learning and growth. And so, you also had a lot of advice, which I'm glad that you've been able to pour out and reflect on this podcast. But anyone interested in Australia, anyone interested in medicine, in a combination of the two, very valuable for them. Highly recommend going back to this episode and listening to certain parts again. We'll end on a slightly more exciting note. So I'll be asking you some quick, fast fire questions, sort of throwing them at you like bullets. Feel free to answer in just one short phrase or one sentence. We'll start with your ideal university setting, and would it be urban, suburban, or rural?
Suburban for sure, I think, best of both worlds.
For sure. And is Perth suburban? Would you describe it as suburban?
I would say so, yeah, because it is one of the biggest cities of Western Australia, but it's still one considered regional. So I'd say so.
Perfect. I would love to hear, I've been dying to ask this question. I would love to hear some Australian slang from you in the best Australian accent you can.
Oh, Australian accent, like for sure I can't. I still don't know how that happens. The only thing I can maybe manage to say is water. I
Okay,
have no idea. But I'd say Chakayui,
Yui.
which means take a U-turn.
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting. What's a stereotype or a false belief about Australia or Australians that has been proven completely wrong once you've actually been there?
That spiders probably crawl out of your toilet and there's snakes everywhere. And you'll probably find an insect roaming around in your room. That's not what happens. You're not living in the wild. It's not the case. And in terms of, as I said, party culture, there's definitely some amount of party culture. Australians also love a good beer and fun times. So
Mm.
even though people say, oh my God, it's Australia, it's so like remote, it's disconnected, they know how to have fun.
Mm. Yes, absolutely. I've been dying to visit someday. It's on my bucket list. Uh, one dish from home that you missed a ton while at university.
Roti sabzi, any roti sabzi, because I feel like if they think of Indian food, they think rice and curry works. But no, I miss roti, ghar ki roti, like homemade roti.
Lovely. I'm glad you're having a chance to have some of that back home. Uh, the most, you're a bio student, I have to ask the most complicated bio term you've ever come across.
There isn't just one. Any phobia, like the name of any phobia or any disease, is complicated. But from my studies so far, maybe vesico-uretral reflex.
Okay, and I won't even ask you to define it. Let's just move on. Lastly, if you had to leave with one piece of overarching advice for someone younger than you, a high schooler, this could be about university, this could also be about life at large. What would that insight be?
I think I would just like to say if anyone who's watched Inside Out 2 by now, you probably know by the end of it that you can't keep the best and toss the rest. Literally live by that. You should probably embrace every single emotion in your journey, knowing that it's okay to ask for help and take time for a reset. And you should try your best to enjoy every moment, live in that moment, and make sure to give your best in whatever you're doing academics, relationships, self healing, everything.
Mm, brilliant. And please watch Inside Out 2. Phenomenal movie. Uh, all
Preach.
I say this on every episode. These have been some lovely conversations. Unfortunately, all great things, all great conversations. We have to wrap them up. But I really enjoyed this time and this chat. If a listener wants to connect with you or has some follow up questions, what's a good way to reach out?
I have LinkedIn. Definitely, that's something you can maybe try and connect with me at. It's my name is spelled as Mehek, Mehek, which is my first name, and my last name is Sanghavi, Sanghavi. So that's the same as the name of my LinkedIn profile. Do search that up and send me a follow request. And if you want to maybe have me accept it, maybe send me like a message saying, hey, saw the podcast, want to connect. Maybe that'll give me a good idea of trying to accept it. And maybe email. Yeah, if you really have a question that you're curious about, want to follow up, you can reach out to me through email. And it's mehek.s.sanghvi@gmail.com. And I'm sure my name will probably be spelled out in the podcast somewhere. But if you need to, I've given the spelling and just rewind a little.
Absolutely. Yes, I will mention this in the description as well. I hope people connect with you after and bother you with some sort of follow on questions. But thank you so much for your wise words on University Unraveled. Lot of such a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a great time trying to. I hope I've answered all of your questions with as much insight as I can. And I hope this really helps at least one listener out there. And I hope all of you listening have an amazing time at whichever university and whichever course you decide to go to.
All right, that was the episode. To all the young listeners out there, I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something new. And I hope you feel more energized, inspired, and curious for the exciting university journey that lies ahead. Stay tuned. Many more wonderful episodes to be released on Uni Unveiled across a diversity of majors, countries, institutions, and speaker profiles. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Uni Unveiled. This podcast is just a small part of a much larger initiative undertaken by my family called Serene Strokes to spread positive sparks of growth, transformation, and joy among all our audience. Check out our official website www.serenestrokes.com. In the description and comments, please feel free to share other topics and questions which you would love to hear about from our different speakers on this podcast. Until then, take care and remember that this big word, university, may not be as scary or as intimidating as you think it is. Thank you for listening to Uni Unveiled.